Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be exploring more great city maps. But first, it's another boiling hot night tonight, so I need a window open so I don't melt. So there might be some city sounds in the background. I apologize if that's not your thing, but I think it's kind of appropriate for city maps, right? To hear some city sounds in the background. So I ran a poll on my community tab to see which cities you guys wanted to see. And tonight we're going to be looking at Stockholm and Seoul. Those were the two big winners. So let's just dive right in. Check this out. We have a map of Stockholm from 1805. First, let's read about it and then we'll examine the map. So, Stockholm 1805. It's by Carl Friedrich Ackerel. It's an engraving. It's located in the Stockholm City Museum and it's just titled Map of Stockholm. Now, I do apologize for any Swedish pronunciation I get wrong. Swedish is notoriously difficult. I'm doing my best. If I make any huge errors, just correct me down in the comments. So let's read about this big engraving. Isn't that incredible? This is all engraving. Let's learn about it. This beautiful and unusual oval map, engraved by Carl Friedrich Ackerel and published in 1805, places the island of Gamlestan at its center. The position of the island reflects its status as the birthplace of Stockholm. It is where a first mighty fortress was constructed in 1252 to guard the gateway from the Baltic Sea to the trade routes of Lake Mälaren. In the following centuries, the capital city of Sweden expanded north across the Norrström waterway to create the district of Norrmalm, and south across the Söderström to create Södermalm. During the reign of King Gustav II Adolf, these areas eventually developed along the rectilinear street plan that is highlighted in red on this map. Remind me to point that out too. The city grew little over the next 2 centuries, as it was ravaged by fire and disease, including a plague in 1710 that killed about a third of the population. Sweden was defeated in several wars, ceding territories to Prussia and in particular Russia, and the country was no longer the great northern European power it had been. However, at the dawn of the 19th century, when this map was created, Stockholm was emerging from its state of stagnation. Already a few notable developments had been sponsored by King Gustav III Adolf, who had created Gustav Adolf Square and inaugurated a royal opera there in 1782, both on this map. The advent of industrialization would more than quadruple Stockholm's population in the coming century, making this 1805 map a snapshot of a city on the cusp of inexorable change. So let's check this out. It's pretty neat. So here's Gamlestan here. So thank you for reminding me. The red street plan here was it says rectilinear street plan. So I wonder if that means like the boxy shape that you see in a lot of modern cities. All throughout up here and down here. So yeah, Gamlestan's right in the middle, the old town. You can see that's where the palace is. I guess that's the old fortress. Up here is where the parliament is on this island. This map points out the new Royal Swedish Opera House right here, I suppose, which is still there also to this day. We've got, and it points out a lot of bays and things, the Baltic Sea Bay of Saltsjön, the district of Södermalm over here, the freshwater Lake Mälaren, and the island of Kungsholmen up here. Which it's interesting to look at this map and see just how much it's expanded out past this, right? It's very interesting. Let's read about our map maker, Carl Friedrich Ackerel, 1779-1868. While still in his teens, Akrell placed his skills as a map maker at the service of the Swedish military. He most probably owed his prodigious cartographic talent to his father, who was also an engraver. Akrell's map of Stockholm was drawn in the years 1802 to 1803, when he was barely in his 20s, and this version was published in 1805. Working as an army surveyor and cartographer, Akrell eventually reached the rank of lieutenant general and also became the first director of the Swedish Topographical Corps. He made a fascinating and historically valuable set of engravings based on sketches taken by a Swedish naval officer, Axel Leonhard Klinkauström, on a tour of the United States in 1818 to 1820. Akrell also produced many more maps and charts, although perhaps not as notable as his early work on Stockholm. Yeah, I think the fact that this map is an engraving is what's really incredible about this. That he really took the time to carve this map. This isn't a drawing. This was carved into wood. Very, very incredible, all the little details and everything. Very neat. So let's head over to the other side of the world and check out a very old map of Seoul. Here we go. Check this out. That's pretty neat. So this is Seoul. It's undated, unknown artist, and it's brush and ink on paper. It's located in the National Library of Korea, Seoul. You can see how big it is compared to a person. And this map's called Hansong Chondo. Let's read about it first. Korea, the hermit kingdom, did not open up to the powers of the West until the 19th century, so its cartography drew inspiration from sources closer to home, notably China, the country's powerful and influential neighbor to the west. While the Koreans used mainly Chinese methods of map making, they added one notable tradition of their own, Hyongsedo. Similar to the Chinese idea of qi, this concept emphasizes the vitality of the land and views the landscape as alive with energy and life forces. When Seoul was chosen as the location for a new capital in 1394 by the newly established Joseon dynasty, it was because of its auspicious setting. The area was surrounded by cat hairs, by a chain of sheltering mountains, and was crisscrossed by watercourses. Topography is prominent in this undated map of the city, which shows rivers running through the map like arteries. Water was an important element in Korean mapping. As for the city itself, the encircling gate-studded walls are clearly visible, passing over the mountains of Bukaksan to the north and Namsan to the south. Also easy to pick out are the walled enclaves that contain the royal palaces of Gyeongbokgung and Cheondokgung, and the shrine of Jongmyo, all established in the first decades of the Joseon dynasty. If you know the layout of Seoul, this is not at all what this space looks like anymore. Except these old palace areas are definitely still there. So let's take a little closer look. First we have Cheondokgung. I'll let you look at the map and I'll trace it while I read it to you. So Cheondokgung is up here. And it says completed in 1412 during the reign of King Taejong, the third ruler of the Joseon dynasty. This was the seat of the royal family until 1872. After Korea was annexed by Japan in 1910, the last Korean emperor ended his days here. And what else do we have? Doksagung, very famous one. The walls in particular are still really famous to this day. Get to there's a little path here. You get to walk along the walls, the Doksagung walls. It's a very romantic place in the fall, apparently. It says the last of 5 great palaces, or grand palaces, to be built in Seoul, Doksagung was completed in 1592. It became the seat of power in the same year after the Japanese destroyed Gyeongbokgung and burned all the other palaces, but only until Cheondokgung was rebuilt in 1618. Let's look at Jeongno, which is this part right here. And it says, this was a shrine where the dead rulers of the Joseon dynasty were honored. It originally took the form of 2 large wooden buildings containing wooden blocks in which the deceased were said to reside. It's still a very famous place. And then Gyeongbokgung, probably like the most famous of all the palaces in Seoul, which this is so funny, this map, because just this looks exactly like it. You can see the Gwanghwamun Gate right here. There's the big lake, perfect square, the trees, the palace right here. It's like the pavilion. This is still exactly what it looks like. So interesting. Okay, sorry if the angles changed. My phone overheated, so I gotta make this quick because it's getting too hot. I'm sticking to the book and there's way too much noise outside. So let me read to you about Gyeongbokgung Palace. It says the Palace of Shining Happiness was commissioned by King Taejo. Completed in 1399, it was a complex of more than 400 buildings, and it was the seat of the royal throne for more than 200 years. Yeah, this little gate right here is a very famous spot. I suppose this says Gwanghwamun in Chinese, or Gwanghwamun Gate or something. But yeah, I wonder if this was before Hangul was invented, because everything's in, it looks like Chinese script. It's an undated map, so we don't know. Pretty interesting. But anyway, it's so hot, you guys. I'm gonna have to cut this short. I apologize, but anyway, thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you at least found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope you have a very good night.